The world of crypto may be completely transformed depending on the outcome of the DCG debacle. Hey, I'm T Shroom here for the Investing Bros. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about the DCG debacle and everything you need to know about how it may affect your portfolio and crypto going into the future of 2023. So DCG and its subsidiary Grayscale are in hot water after the co-founder of Gemini, Cameron Winklevoss, published an open letter describing the potentially unethical financial practices going on under the DCG umbrella. Now, fair warning, this is a bearish video, but I believe that it's important to know what major obstacles lay ahead of us in the future of crypto. Now, before I get into any of this, I have to have you like, I have to have you subscribe, and I'm going to want you to comment any thoughts that you have below in the comment section. Now, let's get into it. Digital Currency Group has been a massive driving force for crypto because of all the investments it has made into the space and the positive thought leadership that has come from its CEO, Barry Silbert. But things became very complicated for Barry and his company as the price of Bitcoin continued lower through 2022. Over at Gemini, Cameron Winklevoss felt that he was under pressure from his clients and that it was time to hold not only the feet of Genesis to the fire, but also the feet of Genesis's parent company, DCG, as well. To do this, Cameron published an open letter that described his knowledge of the self-enriching deals going on behind the scenes under DCG's watch that could involve the illegal financial practice of commingling assets. So how will the world's second largest Bitcoin holder solve this PR nightmare without selling hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins into the free market? In this video, I will show you a few possible scenarios for the best and worst outcomes of how this whole debacle could develop over the months of 2023. Now, the absolute best case scenario would be for Bitcoin to reach a new all-time high and then establish a steady rate of growth for the next 10 years. But I should say that this is a best case scenario for Barry Silbert, but not necessarily for the future of crypto. A $70,000 Bitcoin would more than deliver the liquidity needed for Genesis to pay off its debts and for Cameron to call off his public assault on DCG and its subsidiaries. But guys, the whole point of a bear market is for the wheat to be separated from the chaff and the most sturdy companies to be preserved, and for the over-leveraged companies and fraudulent companies to be cast into the fire. If Barry Silbert has been operating some sort of Bitcoin farming arbitrage system that screws GBTC holders and only enriches himself, then his scheme should be fully exposed, charged, taken to trial in the US, and the funds should be returned to investors. But if DCG is being falsely accused by Cameron Winklevoss, then it should be allowed to soldier on and get back on its feet as the price of Bitcoin eventually resumes higher. Justice should be served, but at this point, I don't know exactly what is just. So let's move on to other possible outcomes. After all, Cameron has opened Pandora's box, and guilty or not, Barry has some explaining to do and some tough decisions to make. But let's go ahead and assume that Bitcoin does not print a new all-time high. Let's assume that Bitcoin continues to trade sideways under 25K and Grayscale's GBTC discount continues to grow. What are some of the best and worst outcomes that we could expect? Well, the next best outcome is definitely possible, but is unlikely, and it gets us into some nasty territory because our old nemesis Gary Gensler becomes the center of the conversation. You see, Barry Silbert, CEO of Digital Currency Group, has been actively involved in lobbying the SEC to allow Grayscale to convert its GBTC trust into a full-fledged Bitcoin spot ETF. It is fair to say that Silbert and his organization have been the top industry leaders working to educate regulators and lawmakers about the benefits of a spot Bitcoin ETF. Now more than ever, Silbert needs Gary's SEC to allow Grayscale to convert its trust into a spot ETF. The short version of the reason why goes back to the difference between the trust and the ETF investment vehicles. The shares in an ETF are technically redeemable for a portion of the underlying asset that the ETF tracks. A trust, however, is not redeemable, and that presents an enormous problem for Barry Silbert now that the pressure is on. Until now, Barry has been winning in a game that investors in GBTC may not have even known they were playing, much less losing. See, when you buy a share of GBTC, you are buying a share of a trust that is not redeemable for anything other than the present cash value per share. Now add in the more than 30% discount rate that GBTC maintains on average to this Bitcoin spot price, and you have a recipe for a whole lot of hodling from GBTC investors. According to Cameron Winklevoss, Barry has had GBTC holders trapped because if they sell, they will certainly be selling for about a 30% loss. But here's the thing, guys. The BTC bear market has already been so aggressive that it has caused the collapse of Luna, Celsius, FTX, and many others. And Cameron Winklevoss over at Gemini does not want to be next. So he is forced to make one of his biggest debtors pay up the $900 million that he is owed. Guys, the bear market stopped the party, and the crypto industry has become very illiquid and filled with uncertainty. Everyone not wanting to sell their asset for a loss has created an environment where leaders like Cameron Winklevoss have to fight for the scraps of liquidity that remain in play. If Gary Gensler could just approve a Bitcoin spot ETF, then Barry could make GBTC investors whole and have enough left over to pay out the creditors like Gemini and others. Now, in my opinion, Genesis is likely to go the way of Three Arrows Capital. But who knows? A Bitcoin ETF approval could trigger enough upside in Bitcoin to save even Genesis. Sadly, this best case scenario hinges on the mercy and the generosity of Gary Gensler, who is very unlikely to approve the spot ETF. Especially if it is true that Gary Gensler has been coordinating behind the scenes to bring crypto down. Now that brings us to the not so good scenarios for DCG and for crypto investors in general. According to Grayscale's latest SEC filing in September of 2022, the firm is backing their GBTC trust with more than 600,000 Bitcoins, which is worth about $13.3 billion as of the recording of this video. I'm talking 9K at a conservative estimate. It's tough to say for sure. Legally, it would not be possible for Grayscale to sell all that Bitcoin, so they are unlikely to choose that route. Though trusts are less flexible compared to ETFs, they do have legal obligations to their investors not to just run off and sell the underlying asset. But keep in mind, DCG does hold 9.67% of GBTC's total shares. That means that it could, in theory, sell 67 million shares in the GBTC market that trades less than 4 million shares a day. But by law, DCG is bound to sell no more than 1% of its shares every quarter. So it could sell it all, just not at the same time. Bitcoin's price is safe in that regard. But there is another possible outcome in the cards, but it yet again brings us back to Gary Gensler, and ultimately it gives him so much power over crypto's future. There's a company called Valkyrie, and Valkyrie is a company like Grayscale, and it has issued compliant Bitcoin investment vehicles for institutional investors. Valkyrie has offered to file a request to the SEC to become the GBTC new manager through a rule called Regulation M. Now, according to my research, the GBTC holders would have a one-time chance to sell their shares for the price of the net asset value, or NAV, when and if Valkyrie takes custody of the trust. This could, in theory, allow those institutions like Cathie Wood's ARK Investment, who bought GBTC, to recoup much of their losses from the trust's discount to the spot price of Bitcoin. But again, Gary Gensler would have to approve this, and it's not clear that he would. But it seems like it could be more likely for him to approve a Regulation M versus a Bitcoin spot ETF. Guys, Valkyrie may have just scored big time with this offer, by the way. Makes me wonder if there could be a way to gain exposure to Valkyrie in a way you and I could benefit from the transfer of management. But zooming out, the DCG debacle is sure to remain in crypto news until it is resolved. Just recently, Tron's founder, Justin Sun, was reportedly looking into spending $1 billion in digital currency group's assets, although it's unclear what assets he actually wants. But this is a major story that has massive implications for crypto's future. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on the details of Cameron Winklevoss's open letter to DCG's CEO, Barry Silbert. In this video, I really lightly covered the allegations that Cameron has made about the potentially illegal dealings that were being carried out under the DCG umbrella by way of organizations like Three Arrows Capital. I only included what I felt you needed to know to get through the backstory to understand the possible outcomes of this situation. Now, before I go, I want to again highlight the weight and severity of what a failure of DCG could mean for crypto. Because guys, DCG is extremely well connected in DeFi and TradFi. DCG is invested in names like BitGo, Kraken, Bitflyer, CoinJar, Ledger, Etherscan, Shapeshift, Second Market, Zcash, Decentraland, Blockstack, Ripple, and Coinbase. DCG has also been invested in by big banks like HSBC, Citibank, and financial institutions like MasterCard and NASDAQ. If DCG goes down, the crypto winter intensifies and extends further into the future. Like I said, guys, definitely a very bearish video, but I wanted to make sure that you understood what could be in store for Bitcoin in the future. I have been T-Shroom for the Investing Bros, bringing you up to speed on this whole DCG debacle. We go live every weekday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'd love for you to join us. But that's all I got for you in this video, guys. Make sure on the way out you consider subscribing to our channel to stay up to date on everything that matters in crypto, and leave us a like too, because hey guys, we are the most generous investment community online, and we're continuing to just grow in that identity here in 2023. So definitely leave us a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.